So you've reached the point where you're all done with your work in Premiere and now it's time to export your project. So the first thing you need to do is actually choose a sequence. We can't export our project to a video. We need to choose a sequence in which to do that. So I'm going to select the Explore California ad sequence. We can do that here in the timeline panel, or we can do it here in the project panel by opening up sequences and clicking this here. And then we go to the file menu and choose Export Media. This opens up the very powerful Export Settings dialog box, which allows you to actually preview your project with a little current time indicator here. We can actually scrub through, give that a second to render. And so here's a frame from earlier in our project, 7 frames and 18 seconds in to be exact. I'll show you later on in this chapter how you can customize the amount or the portion of your sequence that you export. Now, one of the most important features here is choosing a format. If we go to the format dropdown, you can see we have a variety of formats to export to, including still image file formats such as DPX, JPEG, PNG, Target, and TIFF, and video formats, of course, and also audio formats. So there's audio only, and there's a WAV audio file, there's MP3 down here. So a lot of formats to choose from. Now, you might be wondering why you'd want to export to a still image file format. What that's going to do is actually create something called an image sequence, which is a series of images, and it's going to produce one image for every single frame of the sequence. So the sequence is 24 frames per second. It goes on for 15 seconds, so that would be 24 times 15 roughly. That's a lot of images. However, image sequences are very helpful, and again, also later in this chapter, I'll explain that as well. So we need to pick a format here. I'm just going to leave this set to QuickTime for now. And once we choose a format, most of these formats have associated presets that you can choose if you'd like to. These can be especially helpful if you're new to the world of video and aren't sure exactly which format to choose. So if you know you're going to create a widescreen project for NTSC, you could just choose NTSC DV widescreen, for example. To choose a name for your file output and to choose where to save it, click on Output Names Hot Text right here. Click that, and we could change the name and also choose where to save it. Now, this is really critical. There are these two checkboxes here, Export Video and Export Audio. Make sure you take a double check at these before you go ahead and do your final render, because oftentimes, for whatever reason, one of these might get unchecked. And so if you want to render audio and you spend all this time, maybe hours, rendering video, and you only export the video when it's all said and done, you're going to be very frustrated to find out that there's no audio there. So again, just double check to make sure you export video and audio if that's what you want. Or again, you could selectively choose what you want. You might want just audio, or you might want just video, which is fine as well. So again, be aware of these two checkboxes. Now, if you want to maintain the same format as was brought into your project, you could choose Match Sequence Settings, and you will not be able to then customize the format or the preset because it will get that information from the sequence settings. So for example, if you create a DVC Pro HD sequence using those settings, it's going to render this using DVC Pro HD. Just going to uncheck that for the time being. The last thing to be aware of is that we have these tabs down here for more advanced users. And again, later on in this chapter, I'm going to be getting into these. So once we're all ready and our project's done, we're done with the export settings dialog box, then we have two buttons here that we can choose to use. If we're just going to have Premiere render this, we can click the export button. That will tie up Premiere and keep Premiere busy for a while. If you have a lot going on and you want this to render in the background and you still want to be able to use Premiere, you can use the queue button, which will add this to a render queue using a product called the Adobe Media Encoder, which we'll look at in the next movie.